The letter came on a Thursday, the kind of damp, gray Thursday that settles into your bones and makes you remember every ache. I sat at the kitchen table, the same oak table I'd eaten breakfast at for 42 years, and watched my hand tremble as I held the envelope. It was from the bank. Not a friendly reminder, not a statement. A notice of default. The final one. I'd worked my whole life for this house. Built it with my own 2 hands, piece by piece, nail by nail, back in '82, when lumber was cheap and a handshake still meant something. I was a contractor then, a good one. I built half the houses in this subdivision. People trusted me. I never cut corners, never used cheap materials just to fatten my own pocket. That reputation was worth more than gold. Now, it felt like it was all I had left. The story I'd told everyone, my son, my neighbors, the guys at the VFW hall, was that the market had finally turned on me. A few bad investments, contractor who skipped town with my money on a big commercial job, and a healthcare rebill that could choke a horse. It was a good story because most of it was true. The commercial job had gone south. My back was shot from years of hauling drywall and climbing ladders. But the real kicker, the party I kept locked inside like a dirty secret, was my HERT. The doctors said it was a matter of time. A few years, maybe if I was lucky, and I wasn't going to leave my only son, Kevin, with a mountain of debt and a broken-down house. So, I see we'll get up a plan. A test. It was a basta RD of an idea, I knew that. But I had to know. For the last 20 years, ever since his mother passed, I had given that boy everything. The best schools. A CA on his 16th birthday, a new one, not some beater. I paid for his college tuition, even when I had to take out a second mortgage to do it. I co-signed for his first house. I bailed him out of jam with the IRS that he never even told his wife about. I had been his safety net, his personal bank, his fallback plan, and he had taken it all with a smile and a promise to pay it 4-way RD someday. Now, I was about to see if that promise was worth the air it was spoken on that the phone call was the rightest pa RT. I dialed his number, my thumb hovering over the call button like it was a detonator. When he answered, his voice was cheery, breezy. "Hey, Pop, what's up? We were just about to fire up the grill." I hesitated. "Kevin, I need to talk to you about something. It's important." Sure. Shoot." I took a deep breath. "Son, it's the house. The bank, they're taking it. I'm losing everything." There was a silence on the other end of the line. Not the comforting kind, but the kind that stretches and gets Aquay Road. I could hear a woman's voice in the background, his wife, Megan, asking who it was. "Dad, what are you talking about? You got a reverse mortgage on that place years ago. You're supposed to be set. Plans change, Kevin. The well went dry. The savings is gone. I've got nothing left but the clothes on my back and my old pickup truck." I put all the weight I could into my voice, making it sound like an old man surrender. I was hoping I could stay with you and Megan for a while, just until I figure things out. Another silence. This one was longer. I could almost hear the Heya RS turning in his head, the calculations, the panic, then the CA refill, measured tone of a man trying to let someone down easy. "Dad, that's a tough break. But, the market's tough for everyone right now. And we just refinanced. The sparee room is Megan's office now. And with the kids and everything, it's just not a good time. We're really tight on space." I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles went white. "I could sleep on the couch, Kevin. I don't need much." "Dad, it's not that simple. We have a routine. The kids need their space. You know how it is." He was lying. I knew he was lying. They had a 4-bedroom house with a finished basement. A house I'd help him buy. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell him that this was a test, that the reason the bank was taking the house was because I'd pulled my money out last week and put in a trust, that he was about to fail the most important test of his life. But I held steady. The performance had to go on. "Okay, son," I said, my voice cracking. "Okay, I understand. I'll figure something out. Listen, Dad, I hate to see you like this. How about I take you out to dinner this weekend, my treat?" My treat. The irony was so thick it made me want to choke. "We'll see," I said, and I hung up before he could hear the ROA, R of disappointment in my EARS. The table was still cluttered with bills and bank notices. I looked around the kitchen. The clock on the wall, a gift from my wife when we first moved in. The faded photograph of me and Kevin at his college graduation. All of it felt like props in a tragic play. I went to the window and looked out at the Bacquier Road. The lawn needed mowing. The fence was sagging. It was my fence. I built it, just like I tried to build Kevin. And now, I felt like I was watching him tear it down, brick by brick. I thought about the RS I'd poured into that boy. The long hours on job sites, my back aching, my hands calloused and bleeding, just so I could put food on the table and a roof over his head. I remember the time I took a second job at the RDWA restore, working nights, so I could afford to send him to that summer computer camp he'd begged for. He'd come home from that camp full of big ideas about the future, and I'd sat there at this very table, proud as a peacock, thinking I'd done something right. I thought I was building a man. I thought I was building a son who would stand by me when the chips were down. But the chips were down now, and he was nowhere to be found. I poured myself a glass of whiskey, the cheap stuff I kept in the Cubaway RD for emergencies. It burned going down, but it settled the shaking in my hands. I looked at the letter from the bank again. The numbers swam in front of my eyes. It didn't matter that the numbers weren't real. The weight of them felt real. The weight of a lifetime of hard work, of sacrifice, of love, all of it reduced to a piece of paper that was supposed to tell me I'd lost everything. I hadn't lost everything. I still had the land. I still had the house. I still had the money. I'd moved into the trust. But I had lost something far more valuable. I had lost the illusion. The illusion that my son was the man I'd raised him to be. The illusion that family meant something more than a transaction. The illusion that when you give everything to a person, they give something back. I finished the whiskey and set the glass down hard on the table. The noise echoed through the empty house. I was alone. Completely, utterly alone. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't sure that was a bad thing. Because when you're alone, you can't be disappointed. When you're alone, no one can let you down. But I wasn't done yet. The test wasn't over. I had to push our rider. I had to see just how deep the rot went. I had to know if there was anything left of the boy I'd raised, or if he had been replaced entirely by a stranger who wore his face the next day. I made another call. This time to Milt, my old friend from the VFW. I told him the same story about losing the house, about the bank, about needing a place to stay. Milt didn't hesitate. You come stay with me, Frank. I got a spa-ree room. It's not much, but it's a roof. You need a hand, you got one. I thanked him and told him I'd think about it. But I wasn't going to take his offer. I wasn't going to take anyone's offer. I needed Kevin to come through. I needed him to prove that the RS I'd spent raising him weren't wasted. I needed him to be the man I thought I'd built. But the phone didn't ring. The door didn't knock. Kevin didn't come. And I sat there in the house I'd built with my own hands, surrounded by the ghosts of a life I'd poured into a boy who had turned into a stranger. And I realized that the hardest part of being a father wasn't the sacrifice. It wasn't the long hours or the aching back or the sleepless nights. The hardest part was the moment you realized that all the love you gave might not be enough. I looked out the window again. The sun was setting over the fence I'd built. The fence was sagging, just like I was. But I wasn't done yet. I still had one more move to make. One more test. One more chance to see if my son was worth saving. And if he wasn't, well, I'd already made peace with that too. Because a man who builds his life on lies, whether he knows it or not, will always end up standing alone. I just never thought I'd be the one standing there. The news spread fast. Faster than I expected. It had been a week since I called Kevin, and I hadn't heard a peep from him. No dinner invitation. No follow-up call. Just a single text message. Busy week, pop talk soon. It felt like a knife in the gut. Meanwhile, the rumor mill at the local VFW hall was churning. I've been a member for 30 years, ever since I came back from the NOM. These are my brothers. They knew my story, and they knew Kevin. They had watched him grow up from a little snot-nosed kid to a slick-haired businessman in a nice suit. I saw the looks they gave me. Pity. A silent pat on the shoulder that was supposed to make me feel better. It didn't. Did I hear you're going through a rough patch, Frank, said Milt, a man who'd lost his own son to a gambling addiction. How's the boy taking it? I shrugged, taking a sip of my Look-You-A RM coffee. He's busy, I guess. Too busy for his old man. Milt shook his head. That ain't right. You need anything, you tell me. I got a spa room. It's not much, but it's a roof. I thanked him, but the offer stung worse than the pity. It was a stranger, a friend, but a stranger nonetheless, offering me what my own blood refused. That was the moment the anger st root to boil. The disappointment was turning into something else. A cold, hard resolve. The test was still on. I decided to push it further. I needed to see if Kevin would come through when he saw me on the ground, bleeding. So I set up the next phase that I went to the local diner where Kevin liked to have his business lunches. I knew his schedule. I knew he was there every Tuesday with his developer buddies. I made sure I looked the part. A worn-out flannel shirt, a few days of stubble, and the tired, defeated slouch of a man who'd lost the will to fight. I shuffled in through the door, the little bell jingling. There he was, sitting in a booth with two men in expensive suits, laughing about something. He looked so prosperous. His hair was perfectly combed. His shirt was crisp. He was the picture of success, and I was the ghost at the feast. I walked right up to his table. Kevin, I said, my voice soft and trembling. Son, I hate to bother you, but I need to ask you something. His face froze. His smile evaporated. He was an actor who'd forgotten his lines. Dad, what are you doing here? I'm sorry to interrupt, I said, putting my hand on his ARM. My truck broke down. I need a little cash for a tow. Just $100 RS or so. I'll pay you back next week when the pension check comes in. He looked at his friends, then back at me. The MBA harassment was palpable. He was a man who liked to control his image, and here I was shattering it. Dad, this really isn't the time, he hissed, trying to pry my hand off his ARM. We're in the middle of a deal here. I'm sorry, son, I need the truck. I'm sleeping in it. He fumbled for his wallet, his face reddening. He pulled out two 20s. Here, he said, shoving them at me. I only have this on me. It's all I can spare. Now, please, we're in the middle of something. I took the money. $40 RS. It was an insult. I was worth more than $40 RS to him, and I knew it. He had over $50,000 RS in his savings account. I'd helped him set it up. I knew the balance. I thanked him quietly, a broken man's thank you, and shuffled away. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. The look on his face was burned into my memory. It was the look of a man who saw his father as an EMBA harassment, a liability, a stain on his perfect little life. I went back to my truck and sat there for a long time, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles ached. The $40 RS sat on the passenger seat like a slap in the face. I could have torn it up. I could have thrown it out the window, but I didn't. I folded it fully and put it in my wallet. I was going to keep it. I was going to keep it as a reminder of exactly what my son thought of me. The third hit came a few days later. I'd heard through the grapevine that he was trying to sell my old boat. It wasn't a fancy boat, a little fishing skiff I'd bought when he was a teenager, one of our few happy memories. We used to go out on the lake every summer. It was one of the last things I had left that wasn't tied to the house. I confronted him at his office. His office was in one of those glass towers downtown, the kind of place where everyone wears a suit and talks about qua rudely evenings like they're discussing the weather. The receptionist looked at me like I was a vagrant who'd wandered in off the street. I asked for Kevin, and she buzzed him. A few minutes later, he came out, his face a mask of professional calm. Dad, what are you doing here? You should have called first. Kevin, I heard you're selling the skiff. He leaned back, crossing his arms. A smug look crept across his face. He was in his element now. The big corporate office. The power. The sense of control. Dad, look, you're in a hole. I'm trying to help you dig yourself out. You've got assets that are just sitting there. The boat, the tools, and the GA rage. I can get you a good price for them. It's for your own good. For my own good. I laughed, a dry, hollow sound that echoed off the glass walls. You're selling my boat to pay for my own good. It's an investment, Dad. It's what I do. I manage assets. Yours are just stagnant. He used that word. Stagnant. Like I was a pond full of scum instead of his father. I felt the heat rise in my chest. My hand was shaking again, but not from nerves. From anger. Pure, white-hot anger to Kevin. I said, my voice dropping to a low, cold register. I have a question for you. and I want you to answer me honestly. Sure, Dad, shoot. If I died tomorrow, what would you miss more, me or the inheritance? His face went pale, then red. A flush of anger and embarrassment that spread from his neck to his forehead. What kind of question is that? That's outrageous. It's a simple question, son. He slammed his hand on the desk. The sound echoed through the empty office. I don't have to listen to this. You're in a bad place, Dad. You're not thinking straight. You're paranoid and you're bitter. I'm trying to help you, and this is what I get. You haven't helped me at all, I said quietly, my voice steady. You've been avoiding me. You've made me feel like a burden. You gave me $40 and called it charity. Because that's all you deserve, he shouted. The words hung in the air like a grenade with the pin pulled. There it was. The truth. The ugly, unvarnished truth that he'd been hiding behind his expensive suits and his easy smiles. I wasn't a father to him. I was a resource. A well that had run dry. A tree that needed to be chopped down for firewood. He'd said the words aloud, and there was no taking them back. I stood there, looking at him, the son I'd raised, the boy I'd see ride on my shoulders, the young man I'd put through college, the adult I'd bailed out of trouble more times than I could count. And I realized, in that moment, that he was a stranger who wore my son's face, but had none of his ERT. I walked out of his office without another word. I didn't slam the door. I didn't yell. I just walked. Out of the office, out of the building, and back to the life he was so eager to liquidate. The test was over. I had my answer. But the answer wasn't what I'd hoped for. The answer was a wound that wouldn't heal. The answer was a betrayal so deep that I didn't know if I'd ever recover from it. I'd spent my whole life building things. Houses, fences, a reputation, a son. And now, I was watching it all crumble. I got back in my truck and sat there for a long time. The sun was setting again, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. It looked like blood. It looked like the end of something, but it wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of a new phase. A phase where I stopped being the kind father and STA root being the hard teacher. A phase where I stopped giving and STA root demanding. A phase where I stopped hoping for the best and STA root preparing for the worst. Because the truth was, I still loved my son. I couldn't stop loving him, no matter how much he hurt me. And maybe that was my weakness. Or maybe, just maybe it was my strength that I STA rooted the engine and drove home. The house was dark, but I didn't turn on the lights. I sat in the living room in my favorite chair and looked at the photographs on the mantel. Pictures of Kevin at every age. The baby in my ARMS. The little boy with a fishing rod. The teenager in his cap and gown. The young man in his wedding tuxedo. They were all the same boy, and yet they were all strangers. I closed my eyes and made a decision. The test wasn't over. It was just taking a new turn. And this time, I wasn't going to be the one bleeding. That night, I didn't sleep. I paced the house, my old bones aching, my mind racing. The truth was a bitter pill, but I had to swallow it. I had been a fool. A doting, hopeful fool who thought that pouring money into a child would pour love into the child. But you can't buy love. You can't EARN loyalty. You can only hope it grows on its own, like a stubborn weed in the cracks of a sidewalk. And Kevin's ERT was a BA-RIN patch of concrete. The next morning, I went down to the bank and met with my attorney. His name is Arthur, a man older than me, with a voice like gravel and a mind like a steel trap. We'd gone over my plan 100 times. He was the only one who knew the truth. That Frank, he said, wiping his glasses. I've set up the accounts as you directed. The trust is ironclad. The house deed is clean. The pension is secure. Your assets, protected. But tell me, are you sure about this? Once you cut him off, it's irreversible. He'll RN the truth eventually. It might destroy him. Arthur, I said, my voice heavy. He has to find out. The truth is going to save him, whether he likes it or not. He needs to be broken down before he can be rebuilt. I'm not doing this to punish him. I'm doing this to save him from himself. Arthur nodded slowly. He'd known me for 40 years. He'd seen me through the death of my wife, through the ups and downs of my business, through all the small victories and the crushing defeats. He knew me better than anyone alive, and he knew that when I set my mind to something, I didn't back down. If that's what you want, Frank, I'll make it happen, he said. But I'm telling you, this is going to get messy. The boy's not going to take it well. I don't expect him to, I said. I expect him to fight. I expect him to scream and yell and blame everyone but himself. That's what he does. That's what he's always done. But this time, there's no one else to blame. This time, he's going to have to look in a mirror and see the truth. I left Arthur's office with a folder full of documents. The trust agreements, the deed to the house, the bank statements that showed every penny I had was safe and sound. It was a lot of paper, but it all came down to one simple fact. I was in control. Not Kevin, not the bank, not the universe. Me. And I was about to prove it. That I arranged a meeting at the house. I called Kevin and Megan and told them it was urgent. The bank is coming tomorrow, I said over the phone, my voice trembling on purpose. They're taking everything. I just want to say goodbye to you, to the grandchildren. Please just come. When they arrived, Kevin and Megan looked like they just stepped out of a catalog. She had a designer handbag and a fake smile. He had a look of B.A. Rely concealed impatience. He was wearing a new watch. A Rolex. I couldn't help but notice it. I'd given him a watch for his 30th birthday, a nice one, but this was fancier. More expensive. He'd bought it with the money he'd saved while I was paying his bills. The living room was a wreck. I'd pulled down the boxes, STA route packing my things into old CA Riboe road boxes. The grand piano I bought for MA RGA Ret was sold. The china cabinet was empty. It looked like the aftermath of a hurricane. Dad, this is really sad, Megan said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. But we talked about it, and we think it might be better for you to move into one of those assisted living places. They're not so bad. They have activities. Assisted living, I repeated, looking at Kevin. Is that what you want from me, son? Dad, it's practical. You're not going to be able to stay in this house much longer. It's too big, too much maintenance. I found a nice place on the north side. It's actually very affordable. I can help you with the paperwork. He had it all planned out. He was going to ship me off to a facility, sell the house, and wash his hands of me. And I let him believe it. I nodded along, a broken old man nodding to the cruel logic of a young dad. But then I heard the sound. It was a CA pulling into the driveway. Then another. Then another. The engine of a big truck. I looked out the window and saw the long black CA belonging to Arthur, my attorney. Behind it was a van from the local news station. And behind that, a CA I recognized, a wealthy business rival of Kevin's. What the hell is that? Kevin said, his face paling. Just a few people I need to see, I said calmly as I opened the front door. Arthur stepped out, holding a thick folder. The news camera was on. The neighbor's curtains were twitching. I looked back at Kevin, who was frozen in the doorway, a look of sheer confusion on his face. Frank, Arthur said, handing me the folder. It's all here. Thank you, Arthur. I turned to Kevin. I watched his face. The confusion was turning into dread. He knew something was wrong. His CA fully constructed world was rooting to crack. I need to tell you the truth, son, I said, my voice suddenly strong, no longer trembling. And this is the final part of the test. I don't understand, Kevin stammered. What test? The test to see if you're my son? Or just a leech? Megan gasped. Kevin's face went white. The camera rolled. I could hear the neighbors murmuring. It was a spectacle. I had orchestrated every moment of it. Frank, what are you doing? Megan said, her voice shrill. You're making a scene. This is EMBA harassing. Stop it right now. No, Megan, I said, turning to her. This isn't EMBA harassing. What's EMBA harassing is the way you've treated me. The way you've treated your husband's father. The way you've encouraged him to see me as a burden instead of a blessing. You're the one who should be EMBA harassed, not me. I opened the folder and pulled out the documents. I held them up for the camera to see. The trust documents, the deed, the bank statements that the house isn't being foreclosed, I said, my voice steady. I paid it off years ago. The debt isn't real. The bankruptcy was a lie. It was all a fiction I created. You wanted to know what my life was worth, so I gave you a front row seat to the show. Kevin looked like he was going to be sick. His face was ashen. He took a step back, shaking his head. You faked it. You faked your own bankruptcy just to catch me. I didn't want to catch you, Kevin. I wanted to save you. Do you understand the difference? You got a good job, a nice house, a beautiful family. But inside you, there's a rot. The same rot that NEARLY turned you into a greedy, soulless man who would throw his own father into a cheap nursing home. The news camera was zooming in on Kevin's face. He looked around, desperate. He saw the neighbor's STA ring. He saw the rival's smirk. He saw the world he had built crumbling before his eyes. He lunged four-way RD and grabbed the folder, trying to tear it from my hands. "You can't do this to me," he screamed. "I'm your son. You can't humiliate me like this." "Hold him, Arthur," I said calmly. Arthur put a hand on Kevin's shoulder, holding him back. I put the papers away. "You know what the shocking truth is, Kevin," I said. "It's not that you failed. It's that I failed you. I failed to teach you how to be a man. I gave you everything I had, and I thought that was enough. But it wasn't. I created a monster, and now I have to fix it." I looked at the camera. "I'm doing this because I love you, son. And the first step to loving a son is to stop enabling him." Kevin's face crumpled. The anger drained out of him, replaced by something else. Something I'd never seen before. Shame. Real, deep, bone-crushing shame. "Dad, please," he whispered. "Please don't do this. Let's talk about this in private. I'll get help. I'll do anything." "Too late for that, son. The lesson has to be public. The truth has to be seen to be believed." I looked at Megan. Her face was a mask of fury, but I could see the fear behind it. She knew she was caught. She knew I could see right through her. "And you," I said, my voice cold. "You are the worst kind of woman. You drove a wedge between me and my son. You filled his head with ideas about money and status, about us versus him. I've seen how you look at me, like I'm an old piece of furniture you want to throw out. You didn't just poison my son, you poisoned your own soul." Megan burst into TRS. Fake TRS, I guessed. I didn't see anymore. Did I turn back to Kevin? His shoulders were slumped. His eyes were red. He looked like a man who'd just been told he had a terminal illness. And in a way, he had. He'd been diagnosed with the disease of selfishness. And the only cure was the truth. "I love you, Kevin," I said, my voice softening. "I've always loved you. And that's why I had to do this. You needed to see yourself the way I see you. You needed to see the man you become. And now that you've seen it, you have a choice. You can either stay that man, or you can change. The choice is yours." I held out the folder. "This is the truth, son. It's not pretty, but it's real. And it's the only thing that's going to save you." Kevin took the folder with trembling hands. He opened it. ST ring at the documents like they were written in a foreign language. "I don't understand," he said, his voice a whisper. "All this money, it was always there, I said, and it was always going to be yours. But not like this. Not as a handout. Not as a Reva RD for being a selfish brat. It was going to be yours as a legacy. A gift from a father to a son who rented it. And now, you have to in it. You have to prove to me, and to yourself, that you deserve it." The camera kept rolling. The neighbors kept watching. And Kevin stood there, holding the folder, his face a mixture of shame, confusion, and something that looked almost like hope. It wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a long, hard road. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like we were on the right track. The cameraman was still rolling. I could see the red light blinking, capturing every second of this moment. The neighbor's lawn was full of people who had the commotion. Kevin was sweating now. He looked like a man who had just realized the floor was falling out from under him. His hands were shaking as he held the folder, the papers inside rattling like dry leaves in a winter wind. "Dad, you can't do this to me," he said again, but his voice had lost its edge. It was pleading now, desperate. "You're destroying my life, my job, my mariage, everything I've worked for." "Everything you've worked for," I repeated, my voice harrowed. "What exactly have you worked for?" "Kevin, the house I co-signed for the CA, or I helped you buy the tuition. I've paid the business connections I introduced you to. What have you built with your own two hands that you can truly call yours?" He opened his mouth to answer, but nothing came out. He knew I was right. He knew that every step of his success had been paved with my money, my sacrifices, my willingness to go without so he could have more. And he'd repaid me with $40 RS and a suggestion to put me in a home. Megan stepped four-way RD, her TR-streaked face twisted with rage. You're a monster, Frank. A cruel, vindictive old man. You set this whole thing up just to humiliate us. You don't love Kevin. You never did. You just love control. I looked at her with a calm that surprised even me. Is that what you really think, or is that what you tell yourself, so you don't have to face the truth about who you married and who you've become? She flinched like I'd slapped her. I wasn't done. Did I know about the credit CARDS, Megan? I know about the shopping sprees, the designer bags, the vacations you took while Kevin was supposed to be saving for the kids' college fund. I know that you've been bleeding him dry for your RS, and he's been too blind to see it. You didn't marry my son for love. You married him for the life he could give you. And now that you see that life might not be so easy, you're looking for the exit. Her face went white. She turned to Kevin, her eyes wide with panic. Kevin, don't listen to him. He's lying. He's trying to TRS APART. But Kevin wasn't looking at her. He was looking at me. His eyes were different now. Less angry. More confused. Like a man waking up from a dream he'd been having for too long. Is it true, he asked, his voice rely above a whisper. What he said about the credit CARDS, Megan hesitated. That hesitation was all the answer Kevin needed. I see, he said softly. I see. He turned away from her and faced me. His shoulders slumped. He looked like a man who'd just been told he had a terminal illness. And in a way, he had. The disease was selfishness, and he was finally being forced to confront it. Dad, I don't know what to say, he admitted. I feel like I've been living in a fog. Like I've been sleepwalking through my whole life. And you just woke me up. Waking up is painful, son, I said, my voice gentler now. But it's better than staying asleep forever. The question is, what are you going to do now that you're awake? He shook his head slowly. I don't know. I really don't know. Then let me help you, I said. That's what I've been trying to do all along. Not punish you. Not humiliate you. Help you. But I can't help someone who doesn't want to be helped. I can't save someone who doesn't think they need saving. The camera was still rolling. The neighbors were still watching. But I didn't see Ari anymore. This wasn't about the spectacle. This was about my son. This was about the boy I'd raised and the man he'd become. And I was going to do everything in my power to bring that boy back. Come with me, I said, gesturing for him to follow. Let's take a walk. He looked at Megan, who was still standing there, frozen, her face a mask of panic and rage. He looked at the camera. He looked at the neighbors. Then he nodded and followed me into the kitchen. The kitchen was the same as it had always been. The same oak table. The same clock on the wall. The same faded photograph of his mother. I pulled out a chair and sat down, motioning for him to do the same. I remember the day you were born, I said, my voice soft. You came into this world screaming, and you didn't stop for a solid hour. The nurses said you had a set of lungs on you. Your mother, God rest her soul, looked at you and said, he's going to be a fighter. He's going to be something special. Kevin smiled faintly. I remember that picture, the one in the living room. I'm in the hospital, and Mom's holding me. That's right, I said. She was so proud of you. And I was proud of you, too. I was proud of every step you took, every word you spoke, every good grade you brought home. I thought I was doing everything right. I thought I was building a man who would be kind, generous, and loyal. I thought I was building a man who would see a RRY on the family name with honor. But you didn't, Kevin said, his voice cracking. I turned out to be a disappointment. You turned out to be human, Kevin. We all do. We all make mistakes. We all get lost. The question is whether we find our way back. And you, son, Ari standing at crossroads. You can keep going down the road you've been on, a road that leads to loneliness and regret. Or you can turn around and START walking tower, RD something better. He was crying now. The TRS were streaming down his face, and he wasn't trying to hide them. It was the first time I'd seen him cry since he was a child. Dad, I'm sorry, he sobbed. I'm so sorry for everything. For the way I treated you. For the $40 RS. For the boat. For the nursing home. I was so wrapped up in my own life that I forgot who you were. I forgot that you gave me everything. And I gave you nothing in return. You gave me something, I said. You gave me the chance to teach you one last lesson. And that's a gift I'll never forget. We sat there for a long time, just the two of us. The camera was still rolling in the other room, but I didn't see Ari. This moment wasn't for the world. It was for me and my son. How do I fix this? Kevin finally asked. How do I make it right? That's going to take time, I said. A lot of time and a lot of work. You're going to have to prove yourself, not just to me, but to everyone you've let down. Your wife, your kids, your friends, your colleagues. You're going to have to EARN back their trust, just like you're going to have to EARN back mine. But I can do it, he said, his voice steady now. I want to do it. I'll do whatever it takes. Good, I said, because that's the only way this is going to work. I'm not giving you the trust fund, Kevin. Not all at once. I'm going to give it to you in pieces over time, and only when you prove you deserve it. I'm going to watch your every move, and I'm going to judge whether you're becoming the man I know you can be. He nodded. I understand. I'll prove myself. I promise. I reached across the table and took his hand. It was the first time I'd touched him in months. The first time I'd felt his warmth, his presence, his humanity. I love you, Kevin, I said. I've never stopped loving you, and I never will. But love isn't the same as enabling. Love means holding you accountable. Love means telling you the truth, even when it hurts. And I'm going to keep telling you the truth, whether you like it or not. I wouldn't have it any other way, he said, squeezing my hand, but we walked back into the living room together. Megan was still there, but she looked smaller now, less sure of herself. The camera was still rolling, but I didn't see a re. I looked straight into the lens and spoke. To anyone out there who's watching this, I said, let this be a lesson. If you have a child, don't give them everything. Give them what they need, but make them EARN the rest. Because the greatest gift you can give a child isn't money. It's the ability to stand on their own 2 feet. It's the strength to face the world without a safety net. And sometimes, the only way to teach them that strength is to let them fall. Kevin stood beside me, his arm around my shoulder. He was still crying, but there was a smile on his face. A real smile. The smile of a man who had just been given a second chance. The news crew packed up their equipment. The neighbors went back to their houses. Megan left without saying a word, and I knew that her mariage to Kevin was on shaky ground. But that wasn't my problem. That was between her and Kevin. The house was quiet again. Just me and my son. The sun was setting outside the window, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. It was the same sunset I'd seen 1,000 times, but somehow it looked different now. It looked like hope. Are you staying for dinner? I asked. Kevin laughed. I don't think I have any other plans. Good, I said. I'll make us some spaghetti. It's not fancy, but it's filling. We sat at the oak table, just like we used to when he was a boy, and we talked. Not about money, not about the trust. We talked about fishing, about baseball, about the time he fell out of the tree and ICA ride him 3 miles to the hospital. We laughed at the old memories, and for the first time in RS, it felt like we were a family again. That the road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be more arguments, more TRS, more hot RD conversations. But we were on the right path, and that was all that mattered. The aftermath was a whirlwind. The story hit the local news that night, then the national news. It was a media sensation. The inheritance test, they called it. Some people praised me for my genius. Others called me a cruel, manipulative old man. I didn't see what they thought. I only read about the one opinion that mattered, and that was Kevin's. For 2 weeks, he didn't call. He didn't visit. I heard through Arthur that he had quit his job. He'd been so humiliated by the exposure that he couldn't show his face at the office. Megan had filed for SEP ration. The news had broken them. They were a house of CARDS, and my truth had been the wind that blew them down. It was a lonely time. I sat in the house that was finally mine again, and I thought about the old days. The days when Kevin was little, before the money, before the success. The days when he would wrap his little arms around my neck and whisper, I love you, Dad. I missed that boy. I missed him so much it felt like a physical ache. I spent my days doing small things. Fixing the fence that had been sagging. Mowing the lawn. Cleaning out the GA rage. It was mindless work, but it kept my hands busy and my mind occupied. I didn't want to think about the possibility that I'd lost my son for good. I didn't want to consider that my test, however well-intentioned, might have pushed him away forever. The phone didn't ring. The door didn't knock. and I sta root to wonder if I'd made a terrible mistake. Then, one evening, I heard a knock at the door. It was a soft knock, hesitant, like the person on the other side wasn't sure they should be there. I opened it, and there he was. He looked like a ghost. He'd lost weight. His suit was wrinkled, and his eyes were red. He looked broken. Can I come in, Dad? He asked, his voice hoarse that I let him in. We sat in the living room. The room was ba now. No boxes, no clutter, just the old furniture. It felt like the start of something, not the end. I've been thinking, Kevin began, every day, all day, about what you said, about me, about everything. What have you concluded? I asked, my tone neutral. I didn't want to show him how relieved I was to see him. I didn't want to make it too easy that everything you said was right, he whispered. I was a jerk. I was a selfish, entitled jerk. I saw you as a source of money, not as a father. I was ashamed of you when you were down. I let a woman who didn't love me twist me into something ugly. He was crying now, big, heaving sobs that shook his shoulders. I'd seen him cry before, but never like this. Never with this much raw, unfiltered emotion. I don't see a re about the money, Dad, he said. I don't see a re about the inheritance. I just want you to look at me the way you used to. The way you looked at me when I was a boy, before I became this stranger. I reached out and put my hand on his shoulder. Kevin, I never stopped loving you. That's the truth. I was disappointed. I was hurt. I was angry. But I never stopped loving you. That's why I did this. Not to destroy you, but to save you. You needed to hit rock bottom to see the truth. I'm sorry, Dad. I'm so sorry. We sat there for a long time. The silence wasn't Aquay Road. It was healing. It was the silence of two men who had been through hell together and were finally finding their way back. I quit my job, Kevin said eventually. I couldn't stay there. Everyone knew. Everyone had seen the news. I couldn't face them. Quitting was a mistake, I said firmly. Running away from your problems is what got you into this mess in the first place. You should have faced them. You should have owned your mistakes and shown them you were willing to change. He nodded slowly. You're right. You're always right. But I didn't know what else to do. I felt like I was drowning. Then let me teach you how to swim, I said. That's what fathers are for. Not to hand you a life preserver every time you fall in, but to teach you how to stay afloat on your own. We talked for hours that night. About his mariage, which was hanging by a thread. About his kids, who he was terrified of disappointing. About his career, which he'd built on a foundation of sand. And about his future, which suddenly seemed so uncertain. I don't know who I am anymore, he admitted. I spent so long being the successful businessman, the provider, the guy with the nice house and the nice California R, that I forgot who I was underneath all of that. Then it's time to figure that out, I said. And the best way to do that is to start small. Do the little things right. Be present for your kids. Be honest with yourself. And most importantly, be humble. Humility is the foundation of everything good. He stayed the night. I made him a bed on the couch, and in the morning, I made him breakfast. Eggs, bacon, toast, just like I used to make when he was a boy. He ate every bite, and for a moment, it felt like nothing had changed. Like we were back in the old days, before the money, before the success, before the rot had set in. But everything had changed, and that was a good thing that over the next few weeks, Kevin sta root to rebuild his life. He found a new job, a modest one, at a small construction firm. It paid a fraction of what he used to make, but he didn't complain. He said it felt good to work with his hands again. He sta root seeing a therapist, someone who could help him untangle the mess of emotions that had been building up for Yaris. He sta root spending more time with his kids, taking them to baseball games and fishing trips, just like we used to do. And he sta root visiting me. Every Sunday, without fail, he'd show up at my door with a 6-pack of beer and a bag of groceries. We'd soothe, together, talk together, and sometimes we'd just sit in silence, watching the sunset through the kitchen window. It was simple. It was ordinary. And it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever experienced, Dad, he said one evening as we sat on the porch, watching the stars come out. I've been thinking about the trust fund, the money you set aside. What about it? I asked, bracing myself. I don't want it, he said. At least, not the way you plan to give it to me. I don't want a handout. I don't want to be bailed out. I want to EARN my own way. I want to build something with my own two hands, just like you did. I looked at him, really looked at him, and I saw something I hadn't seen in you, RS, pride. Not the false pride of a man who had everything handed to him, but the genuine pride of a man who was finally becoming who he was meant to be. Are you sure about that? I asked. I've never been more sure of anything in my life, he said. The money can stay in the trust. It can be there for my kids, for their education, for their future. But for me, I want to do it the HRD way, the right way. I nodded slowly. That's the SMA rudest thing you've ever said, son. We sat there for a while longer, watching the STARS. I thought about all the RS I'd spent worrying about Kevin, all the sleepless nights, all the second-guessing, all the fear that I'd failed him somehow. And now, sitting here with him on the porch, I realized that I hadn't failed him at all. I'd just taken the long way around to success. Dad, he said, breaking the silence. There's one more thing I want to ask you. Shoot, can we go fishing this weekend? Just the two of us. Like we used to. I felt a lump form in my throat. I like that, son. I like that a lot. The next Saturday, we went fishing. I dusted off the old skiff, the one he tried to sell, and we took it out to the lake. We didn't catch much, but that wasn't the point. The point was the quiet, the water lapping against the hull, the sun warming our faces, the simple, easy companionship of two men who had finally found their way back to each other. You know, Kevin said as he cast his line into the water, I used to think that being a man meant having money, power, and respect. But now I realize I had it all wrong. Being a man means being honest, being accountable, being there for the people who need you. That's what you taught me, Dad. That's the real legacy. I smiled and patted him on the back. You're getting there, son. You're getting there. We fished until the sun went down. Then we packed up the boat and drove home. The house was waiting for us, warm and welcoming. And for the first time in a long time, it felt like a home again. The inheritance wasn't the money. It never was. The inheritance was the lesson, the love, the second chance. And in the end, that was worth more than any fortune. So, if you're an old man like me, and you're wondering if your kids love you or for your bank account, don't be afraid to ask the HRD questions. You might not like the answers, but the truth is the only thing that can save a family. Trust me, I know from experience. And if you've been following along with this story, thank you for sticking with me. It's been a long road, but we got there in the end. I hope you read a thing or two about love, loyalty, and the true meaning of family. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more from an old man with a lot of life lessons to share, subscribe to my newsletter. I've got more tales of right break, triumph, and rened wisdom. New stories delivered straight to your inbox every week. Just go to my website and sign up. It's free, and I promise every story will be worth your time. Don't let the old wisdom die out. Join the community. See you next time.